Good day, everyone. We are going to report about a glance at selected Philippine political caricature in Alfred McCoy's Philippine cartoons, political caricature of the American era in 1900s to 1941. By the way, my name is Julian Rizal D. Rodriguez. I'm with Roslyn Ticot, Adrian Monte, Caril Coberos, Angel Ann Maravelas, and Atina Layese, and we are the Group 5. Before we discuss about the author of this book, let me give you some overview about this topic. So, ang mga Filipino artists, kinapang record nila ang mga national attitude sa mga Filipinos before. Kag kung ano ang mga nahitabo sang una, kung ano ang mga culture nga nagbago or may nagbago gid man bala, kung ano mga naimpluwensyahan sa mga Americans sa mga Filipinos sa nag-abot di sila sa aton nga bansa nga Pilipinas. Kag ang ginapang record na nila kimpang compile through a caricature. And hindi lang na siya ordinaryo lang nga cartoons. Hindi lang na siya ordinaryo nga caricature. It is a political cartoons and caricature. So ano na siya? Political cartoons and caricature are a rather recent art form which veered away from the classical art by exaggerating human features and poking fun at its subject. Such art genre and technique became a part of the print media as a form of social and political commentary, which usually targets persons of power and authority. This is a graphic with caricatures of public figures expressing opinions in every significant event in our history. This is a combination of artistic skill, hyperbole, and satire in order to question authority and draw attention to corruption, political violence, and other social ills that is worthy of historical examination. So makahambal ka no nga ang caricature is a unique way in capturing the attentions of the audience, the people, or the viewers. Kay ginapadalaga niya or ginapagana niya ang imagination sa mga tao in representing their own opinions in examining those political cartoons or a caricature. Let's proceed to the author of this book, a glance at selected Philippine political caricature of the American era in 1900s to 1941. The author of this book was Alfred W. McCoy. His birthday is on June 8, 1945 in Massachusetts, USA. His citizenship is United States. Alfred McCoy, who is professor of history at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, has spent the past 30 years writing about Southeast Asian history and politics. His publications include Philippine Cartoons 1985, Anarchy of Families 1994, Closer Than Brothers, Manhood of the Philippine Military Academy 2000, and Lives at the Margin 2001. The political caricature of the American era consists of 377 editorial cartoons and caricatures made by several Filipino artists. This book tackles what and how it is like to be during the time when America takes over the Philippines. During the time between years 1900s and 1941, each caricature illustrated in the book symbolizes the national attitudes upon the arrival of Americans in our land. Why, where, and when the document was written or made. So ilunggohon ta lang no para mas maintindihan ta pagit. First question. So saan o pang illustrate ang caricature nga compile sa book ni Alfred McCoy? Ang sabat, during the time between years 1900s and 1941. Second question, saan diin? Ang sabat, sa Quezon City. Third question, pila ka bilog nga editorial cartoons and caricatures ang nahimo sa Filipino artist? Ang sabat, 377 editorial cartoons and caricatures. Fourth question, why or What is the main purpose of this? Caricature and cartoons. Ang sabat, their main purpose though is not only to amuse and make people laugh about current political situations or issues, but it's also to get readers to think critically and differently about those issues. Additionally, the political cartoon also helps spread information about current events while allowing society to develop critical opinions toward the cartoonist point of view. The last question: what is the book tackles about? Ang sabat, this book tackles what and how it is like to be during the time when America takes over the Philippines. The cartoons also illustrated how unequal and unjust the employment was during those times. Even though Filipinos and Americans have the same nature of jobs, the salaries given to them was unrighteous, which obviously shows Americans' racial prejudice against our fellow Filipinos towards labor. So, ginapakita man din sa cartoons, no, ang hindi patas nga pang sweldo sa Filipinos and Americans. Like, for example, gamaya ang sweldo sa Filipino, while ang Americans, dako iya ang sweldo nga kakabatulan nila. Biskan pareho lang sila trabaho, pareho lang sila gakayod. Yan hindi gidya patas, pretty gidya ka unfair nga plastada. Kag masense mo gidya nga, obvious na gid ba na nga ang mga Americans mercyism against to our fellow Filipinos towards labor. And earlier, nahambal ko naman nga 377 ka-cartoons and caricature ang nakompile sa book ni Alfred McCoy. Pero some of it lang ang i-discuss naman later kay limited lang ang time. But before that, let me give you some steps on how to analyze a political cartoons or caricature. First step, you need to identify the characters, symbols, and objects in the cartoon. Second step, you need to look for clues and details that would give further meaning. Third step, you need to identify the main idea of the cartoon by reading any captions and by putting the message in your own words. So now, I will give this time for Rosing Ticot and Adrienne Tresmonte para i-discuss nila ang mga examples of it.
The Philippine cartoons speak something the truth of the situation of the Filipinos, and of course, the Philippine nation during the time of American and social political change and cultural changes that transpired during the American occupations in the Philippines. Number one examples of political caricature. The Independent on May 20, 1916. The cartoon shows a politician from Tondo named Dr. Santos passing his crown to his brother-in-law, Dr. Barcelona. A Filipino guy as depicted wearing salakot and barong Tagalog was trying to stop Santos, telling the latter to stop giving Barcelona the crown because it is not his to begin with. Analyze the pictures that shows the Philippine politics. The crown symbolized the sovereignty, that means supreme power or authority, during the kasaysayan in the Philippines. Sued by the Spaniards, as we know that during the term of Emilio Aguinaldo, the Filipino does not express their opinion to try to oppose the things to happen. And there is no Filipino who represents for. That's why the crown was really given to the other. The colonizations of Spain passed into the American. The truth is, the cartoon shows that truly happened during the history. Two example of political caricature. The second cartoon was also published by The Independent on June 16, 1917. This was drawn by Fernando Amarcelo and was aimed as a commentary to the working of Manila police at that period. Here, we see a Filipino child who stole a skinny chicken because he had nothing to eat. A salakot labeled Juan de la Cruz was grabbing the officer, telling him to leave the small-time pickpockets and thieves and to turn at the great thieves instead. He was pointing to the huge warehouse containing books of rice, milk, and grocery product. That means we need to understand the history that the American occupation here in the Philippines was also the beginning of the modernization, industrialization in the Philippine country. Capitalism is the upper class controlling the economy. The upper class means the economic group with the greatest wealth and the power in society. If nag-observe kita guys sa aton nga palibot, makita natin ang differences nga ginatawag. The inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor, that really happening in the Philippine setting during the American era until today.
The third cartoon was a commentary on the unprecedented cases of colorum automobiles in the city streets. The Philippine Free Press published this commentary when fatal accidents involving colorum vehicles and taxis occurred too often already. In the fourth cartoon, it depicts a cinema. A blown-up police officer was at the screen saying that couples are not allowed to neck and make love in the theater, while two youngsters looked horrified while an older couple seemed amused. The next cartoon was published by The Independent on the 27th of November year 1915. Here, we see that a caricature of Uncle Sam riding a chariot pulled by the Filipinos wearing school uniforms. The Filipino boys were carrying American objects like baseball bats, whiskey, and boxing gloves. McCoy in his caption to the said cartoon says that this cartoon was based on an event in 1907 when William Howard Taft was brought to the Manila Pier riding a chariot pulled by the students of Liceo de Manila. Here are the analysis questions. Based on the editorial cartoons by Alfred McCoy, what kind of society did the Filipinos had during the American era? Second, choose two editorial cartoons from the compilation of McCoy that are related to the present situation and discuss your answers. Third, what does the author want to convey or tell in these political caricatures? And last, get a recent editorial cartoon and compare it with any of these political caricatures by McCoy. Discuss its similarities or differences.
Analysis of the political caricatures during the American period. The transition from the Spanish colonial period to the American occupation period demonstrated the different strands of changes and shifts in culture, society, and politics. It was also during the American period that Filipinos were introduced to different manifestations of modernity like healthcare, modern transportation, and media. This ushered in a more open and clearer press.
First analysis question. Based on the editorial cartoons by Alfred McCoy, what kind of society did the Filipinos have during the American era? Our answer: the post-independence and the post-Filipino-American period in the Philippines were experienced differently by Filipinos coming from different classes. The upper principality class encountered economic prosperity with the opening up of the Philippine economy to the United States. They were introduced to different manifestations of modernity, like healthcare, modern transportation, and media. Majority of the poor Filipinos remained poverty-stricken, desperate, and victims of state repression. Poor Filipinos get controlled, slaved, and subjugated their consciousness and mentality by the harmless American objects, making Filipinos do most of the work, paying off authorities for Americans' own benefit and personal security, and demanding highest respects from the Filipinos. The transition and its complexities from a Catholic-centric Spanish-Filipino society to an American imperial assimilation society was also depicted. Young people, as early as that period, disturbed the conservative Filipino mindset by engaging in daring sexual activities in public spaces like cinemas. Patronage also became influential and powerful, not only between clients and patrons but also between the newly formed political parties composed of the elite and the United States. From here, growing corruption was shown to be taking over the political processes in the Philippines.
choose two editorial cartoons from the compilations of McCoy that are related to the present situation. So number one example is the cartoon published by The Independent on November 27, 1915. We choose the cartoon because we can compare it in real situation, especially in the Philippine situation. Here, we see the caricature of the uncle of Uncle Sam riding a chariot pulled by the Filipinos wearing school uniforms. The Filipino boys were carrying American objects like baseball bats, whiskey, and boxing gloves. McCoy, in the captions to the said cartoon, says that this cartoon was based on the event on 1907, when William Howard Taft was brought to the Manila Pier riding a chariot pulled by the students of Liceo de Manila. Such was condemned by the nationalists at that time. And the second cartoon was also published by The Independent on June 16, 1917. These two cartoons are related to the present situation. As we observe today, depict a mood of gloom and resignations in the Philippines, grounded in the belief that country's political institutions are struggling.
Third question. What does the author want to convey or tell in these political caricatures? So the answer is, Filipinos from various social classes experience the post-independence and post-Filipino-American periods in the Philippines differently. With the opening of the Philippine economy to the United States or to the Americans, the upper principal class experienced economic prosperity while the poor ones remained poor, desperate, and victims of state repression. In conclusion, the author is trying to depict the various strands of change in our society, culture, and politics during the American occupation period. Americans imposed democracy on us Filipinos without realizing that consequences would change our way of life. And apart from that, it was also during the American period that Filipinos were exposed to modern manifestations such as healthcare, modern transportation, and media.
Get a recent editorial cartoon and compare it with any of these political caricatures by McCoy. Discuss its similarity or difference. The similarities between the political caricature by Alfred McCoy and recent editorial cartoons is that they both have visuals, clues or details, captions or symbols that would give meaning on the picture. Pero, ang caricature ni Alfred McCoy, black and white. While ang recent editorial cartoons, colorful na siya, kagdasig mo lang mabalaan kung ano meaning ka picture, kay kadamo hints, and may mga signage. While ang political caricature, damo kapaya dapat danay interpret sa sina nga picture kung ano imo yung ma-observe. So, you need to analyze it further and deeper for you to know what it is really all about.